Hello and welcome back to this lesson on Azure Monitoring. We are going to take a look at the monitoring and management capabilities within Microsoft Azure. In this lesson, we will start with Azure Monitoring Service, and then we will have a short about different types of monitoring sources that we have. And once we talk about the sources, we will actually take the different type of monitoring data which is coming as the output out of these sources, and then we get that data as an insight, and we will visualize and we analyze and we also respond, and also this data can be fully integrated within your different type of applications, and you can also respond in terms of either sending an emails or auto scaling or by doing some kind of an action. And also you can integrate different kind of tools like ITSM tool to get it a ticket get created when a CPU spikes or some application goes as a bottleneck issues, or such things can be done with the help of Azure Monitoring. So it's an end-to-end solution. So what as a first step, what we do is we identify the source, and then we take the logs or maybe a metrics for this matter, or we talk about these two things when we talk when we call as a metric or when we call as a logs, and how we process that. We will actually look into this lecture, and then whatever the data is coming up, that and on top of it we try to act on it, and we store the data, and then we would be integrating with third-party applications if really needed, and also we can act on it. So this is the overall plan for the learning of the Azure monitoring. So to do this, we would be jumping into the Azure portal, and then we'll go through what are the things to be enabling for the monitoring of within the Microsoft Azure portal. And this way you can actually take a look at what actually different type of monitoring data that you are getting out of here, and the way we configure, for example, a diagnostic settings or a range of other things in the practical. So let's jump into that. And if you see here, uh, the Azure monitoring itself a really collection of different services that Microsoft has provided for us to help ensure that we can monitor our resources properly. And for example, if we take it in the previous slide, we talked about, or we had a look on at least the log analytics service, where it is completely a different service, and this is also now part of the Azure monitoring. So then and there we also talk sometime about different words or the vocabulary which we talk. But now Microsoft, what is they're trying to do is they're trying to integrate everything into the Microsoft Azure portal, especially for the Azure monitoring workspace. Until that, we will get some kind of different terms or terminology that used in some places might be, for example, a classic refers the old way of doing things, and other places you will see monitoring or logging or diagnostic settings. There are actually a number of different things when you think about what you wanted to monitor within Microsoft Azure. So let's start at least starting from the tenant side. So from the tenant, we would try to collect the audit logs for what has been done, which user is trying to create some kind of actions or performing within that tenant, or subscription layer like a service health and activity log, or maybe if you have a different resources, let's say application metrics, or maybe a diagnostic of that application, or maybe a monitoring of your application solution, a complete application, or guest operating system. Let's say you have an VM, you onboarded a VM and you wanted to collect the diagnostic extensions, and that you wanted to process for the log analytic services by installing a log analytic agent. So, or dependency agents, or application full life cycle of the application with the help of application insights. All these things you can actually target as the data source, and then you can actually process for the monitoring of these kind of data types. So that's what I said earlier. So not everywhere you have the same words, or like audit logs are different, and activity logs are different, and diagnostic logs are different. So you have different things, and these are primarily categorized into two different data types. One would be the metrics, other one would be the logs. And we will start with the metrics and then we'll jump into the logs. But what we do is with the data type, we would actually process for the getting the alerts, or maybe for the Azure well process for the log analytics services. That's where you would be getting further level of maybe you can integrate with your Power BI to get a proper report in a GUI mode, or you can pin it on your dashboard so that that resources health can be monitored all the time, and that dashboard can be exported and saved with your colleague or with your teammate so that they will have this unique dashboard, or you can create for your team in other way, what I'm trying to say here. So these are the proper things which we wanted to cover. So we will start with the metrics. What kind of data is exactly metrics? So when we talk about the metrics, the things like maybe average CPU utilization, or maybe a network through output which is running from a specific VM. So in other straight words, what exactly metrics is, it's a lightweight numerical data type, and that actually describing something that is happening for a resource over a given time specific period. Or let's take one more example like CPU utilization or over time, or maybe a through output per second, so and so on. And now when we collect metric data, it's important for us that to monitor within the Microsoft Azure that what we collect at what frequency of a minute, or maybe a for 7 days, or maybe 30 days, all that. So that's very important. So that will be associated when we talk about the metrics data. By default, Microsoft Azure or monitoring services will store for 93 days this information as a metrics information, and which is available as a by default. However, some of these metrics will really require some additional configuration. And now, for example, if we take a good example, if a virtual machine, uh, let's take that as an example, because of when we see metrics provided by a platform, but if we want to see some more in depth of the details of what's happening within the operating system of that specific virtual machine, we can't get that information definitely. So that falls under logs. So let's actually jump into the portal and understand about what exactly metrics. So what we have done is we tried to understand about the source. So you have different sources here, and custom source is nothing but if you created any of the application and which is definitely compatible with REST APIs, you can also integrate that as the source, and then you would be actually collecting either metrics or the logs format, and that would be processed for further analysis and acting on that specific monitoring actions can be performed. So now let's have a look on exactly on what exactly metrics and where we have this metrics within Microsoft Azure portal. I just logged into Microsoft Azure portal, and I can open up one of the virtual machine too, just to show you. So within this virtual machine, if I just take maybe this virtual machine, I do have here a metrics which are populated already close to 4 different data, which is a by default and which is coming from my platform. For example, CPU or network or disk operations. This is in disk as a total, and this is for average. So if I just click on any of this data, actually this goes to Microsoft monitoring as your monitoring specific. So in other words, actually this goes to Azure monitoring. So I can open up directly from here as the monitoring space. So monitoring is another one where you can open up here directly. So you can actually open directly from the monitoring, and if you just go back here, this is where actually it is coming like Metrics Explorer, which is nothing but you need to select what is the resources. So you can select multiple things. Let's say if I want to select multiple things, it throws an error, but what you can do is you can actually pull the required specific resource. Let's say I want a specific VM, for example this VM specific, and I wanted the apply this specific VM, and here these are the pre-built-in metrics which are available. Let's say I want percentage of the CPU, so I get this data. So this data is coming from the local time of last 5 minutes. Let's say I want from the last 24 hours, or maybe last 30 minutes, or maybe last 7 days, how it's actually going. So you see here there is a spike on 40% on May 27th or 29th. So I can actually drill down further to get more information on that. So from what time to what and how was the spike, all this information I can get it directly from here. And if I don't really like it here, this chart, I can change the chart model from maybe a bar, so that would maybe a suitable one. So this actually gives more information, and I can actually drill down further, like 30 days. So this gives me a good status of a specific VM, would happen on what date, got spiked. All that information I can get this information. Metrics are very straightforward, and you can get the data, the required resources, and you can select. And most of the time it would be pre-filled all the required information. And if you want, pin to your dashboard, you can pin this so that it actually goes to your dashboard. So let's pin this information, like pin dashboard. This is what you have to do, and that goes to pinned information. And if you just go back here, so you get your dashboard, and you can customize based on the required information. Once you have done the customization, let's say I want smaller or bigger, all that, once the configuration is done for the dashboard, you can actually export, or you can download, and you can even upload. All that kind of information can be done. Let's jump into the presentation and try to understand where are we. So we understand about the sources, different type of sources are there, and the data, whatever it is coming, that would be comes in a two different formats, and we understand about the metrics. And now it's time for to understand about the logs. So let's understand more about the logs. So when we focus on the logs, from the logs there are two different type of logs you would be collecting. One would be the diagnostic logs, other one would be the activity logs. We'll start with the diagnostic logs, followed by a demo on the diagnostic logs, and then we will be working on the activity logs. The first one is first. Under diagnostic logs, you have three different types of logs can be collected majorly. So the first one would be the tenant logs. When I talk about the tenant logs, which are outside of your logs, uh, for example, a active directory logs. So it's basically out of your subscription specific logs. And other one would be the resource logs. So when we talk about the resource, let's say you have a storage account or maybe NSG, and you wanted to collect that specific log, so that's where the resource logs come. So these resource logs are purely diagnostic logs, so that you understand what's happening, what kind of packets are going with your NSG, all that flow you can understand. And also the OS level logs are collected by an agent which is running inside of your computing resource. For example, a virtual machine, and you wanted to collect the application logs, security logs, or maybe some other logs which are specifically coming from your operating system. So that kind of logs can be collected from the operating system logs. So let's jump into the portal to see where exactly this option and how to collect that. If you're talking about any of the virtual machine, just go to the monitoring section, and you have the diagnostic settings. This is where you can enable uh, your diagnostic logs. Let's say you just wanted to collect some of the verbos or maybe security, all that different things can be collected. Otherwise, you can simply go to your monitoring, and you can actually take whatever the resources you want. From settings, you have the diagnostic settings. This is where it will show you all the resources for your subscription. You can even filter based on the your specific resource groups, but in my case I'm just showing you everything. And this is where you can find out if the diagnostic status are already enabled. Let's say you are enable your diagnostic logs, then it will show you as the enable. Let me take one example of one of the NSG, like in a demo VM NSG. So all I have to do is just click on that specific resource, then I should be able to actually enable directly by adding diagnostic settings. So what would happen is it's gonna ask you what are these settings. So why you're collecting, if you're collecting for a purpose, or maybe a specific settings you wanted to retain. So give a meaningful name. Let's say for me these are settings for my NSG. So I simply give, this is my diagnostic settings for my NSG, and simply I wanted log for my security group events as well as the group rule counters, and all these logs you wanted to stream to maybe Azure Event Hub. If so, you simply have to select this and give your event hub space name and other information, if at all you have already have it. Or you can save safely in your storage account. Let's say I have a storage account called all demo diagnostic storage account. I can simply give here so that it will go, or maybe another storage account, and also I can stream it multiple actions also I can take it. Or when I'm actually storing to my storage account, I can give here a specific retention time. Let's say I wanted to store for 30 days maybe, and the count for other group rule also for the 30 days I want to store. So if you see here, retention policy is 1 to 365 days, and if you set 0, that's going to be, when you configure 0, if you don't want to apply any retention policies and retain data forever, set simply 0 here. For now, I just configure as a 20 for my network security group rule counter, and choosing my security storage account also here. And then I wanted to archive this. I don't want to send to log analytics workspace because this required to create another log analytics workspace, and the additional configuration to be done, I'm gonna do that in the next lecture or maybe within this lecture, but I don't want to mix up this. So simply go for only archiving my all the logs and click on save. That would actually saves my diagnostic settings for my VNet or my NSG. If I just go back to diagnostic settings, I can see here one of the diagnostic settings which we have just created. And if I really wanted, I can create one more diagnostic settings which will send this log specific only to log analytics instead of archiving. So you can achieve this by having multiple diagnostic settings. Let's say the first setting is just for archiving your logs, so you're saving and you're securing them, and other out of that these two logs, one important logs or set of logs might be needed to send to log analytics further, and then maybe from there you wanted to run a Power BI query or maybe run some kind of query on log analytics to get more information, or maybe it would be useful when you are running for a troubleshooting case. So at the end, it will be useful when you have the multiple channels to send the logs. That's the main concept here. Let's try to enable diagnostic logs for the virtual machine. To do that, I can simply go back to monitoring space and diagnostic settings, and you see here, if I start enable guest level monitoring, what would happen is it's actually installing one extension of within this VM, and that would actually collects, or it would actually sends the logging information for us. So if you see, just go back to one of the extensions page, and you see here you have current extensions, or you see here just a monitoring agent is there, but you don't see anything called which is specific to the diagnostics. So let me enable this from going back to the diagnostics and enable. So with the speed of magic of pausing of this video, I'll come back to you once it is enabled. Now the agent has been installed, so this has been fully successfully, diagnostic settings has been enabled. Let's see here, you have more information which is coming out of here, and you also have different tabs that we're going to talk in a minute. And let me directly take it to the extensions page of this VM and see here what was added. You see here this Microsoft Insight, which is a VM diagnostic settings, agent has been installed, and it is actually provisioned successfully. So this will actually pull all the diagnostic settings which we configure under monitoring under diagnostic settings. So let's jump into the what we configured. So you see here performance counters can be configured here. Let's say if it is specific to the SQL server of that VM, you can collect that logs, and also you can customize it. So when we talk about the customization, you have multiple other information and their rate of where you wanted to collect, and including the percentage or count, all that kind of configurations can be done. And also the logs, these are the basic logs which are populating like application critical, error or warning. And if you're looking for the verbose, you can configure all these system level, security level, all that can be configured. Or you can even go for a custom level where it actually talks about more customizing what kind of diagnostic settings or the diagnostic logs you want to collect. Let's say I want for the IAS specific logs, or maybe event tracing specific logs. All that can be actually collected. And if you see here, crash dumps can be collected, and you can add that performance counter or process monitor, all that information. And things is a which is in a preview. I don't think so this is a part of your AZ 500 exam or other exams, but this also collects a specific logs, but this would actually cost you additional charges might apply. And coming back to the agent, so what happened is all these diagnostic logs will save under with this help of this extension, which is nothing but your agent, right? What we talked, so that agent actually saving all the information under storage account with a quota of maybe a 5 GB, and enabling infrastructure logs can be saved, error logging, all that information gets stored into your storage account. So let's go back to all demo diagnostic storage account and see how this data actually looks. So I'll just go back to storage. Within this storage account, you can go to Storage Explorer so that you can explore with the Storage Explorer directly from the Microsoft Azure portal. And if I just go back to the tables, you might have metrics as well as the diagnostics specific. And if you see here, diagnostic infrastructure logs, and within this you have a lengthy of logs are coming up, and these are the logs which cannot be read here properly maybe, but you can actually read these logs if you integrate the log analytics services. That's where it will be useful. So we would go and learn the log analytics services in the upcoming lecture. For now, this is how it looks, and let's review what we have learned so far. So far we focused on metrics and a little point on the logs, and within the logs we also found diagnostic specific logs. Now it's time to learn and understand about the activity logs. So activity logs are different types. So if you see here, these are the activity logs. Like you can do some kind of operations on activities, let's say a user specific or a policy specific or maybe a resource specific. Let's see, one best example is one user is trying to modify some resource, so that falls under activity logs. So again, so what kind of actions they are trying to perform, let's say it actually uses put, post or delete kind of operations which are against on your as your resource manager, so that this falls under administrative or maybe service health or resource health. So these are different type of another kind of logs which you can collect. So let me talk about the service health, which talks about the service health of any of the instance that maybe occurred within your Azure. Or resource health could be anything that is available or unavailable or degraded or unknown status of any of the resource. Or could be alert is a kind of alert or a record that was generated. And auto scale or any of the event related to the operations of any of the auto scaling you have defined. Or security specific, let's say alerts generated by Azure Security Center, or the policies that are reserved for future use by Microsoft. All these we would be learning in the next lecture. By saying that, I'll conclude here and I'll go for the next video series on activity logs. I hope this is useful for you. Thank you for watching this.